Today on Capitol Hill, Senator Gary Peters' questioning of Secretary Kristi Noem is not just about bureaucratic details or accounting. Peters brings a sharp lens to the absurd cost disparity between detaining immigrants in mainland ICE facilities versus Guantanamo Bay. The math is staggering, roughly $165 per day per detainee in the U.S. versus around $100,000 a day at Guantanamo. And these aren't dangerous terrorists being housed offshore. They're migrants facing civil immigration proceedings. Yet they're being shipped to one of the most infamous and expensive detention centers on the planet, an act that seems designed more for political theater than public safety.
For the first time in U.S. history, the federal government, at the direction of President Trump, is moving immigrants apprehended and detained in the United States on civil immigration charges to a naval station at Guantanamo Bay, which I know you're very familiar with. In March, I traveled to Guantanamo Bay with several colleagues to have a firsthand examination of the detention operations underway. And I certainly have serious concerns about the cost involved there. To date, can you tell us the total cost for detaining individuals at Guantanamo Bay?
You want the cost per individual?
Do you have that?
I do not have that with me today, sir. I can get that for you.
Well, I do have a number. Do you know how much it costs to hold an immigrant in ICE detention facility in the United States? Do you have that number?
Are you talking per day? 100 and I believe the last estimate that I got was $142 a day, around in that approximately, per day.
Yeah, but it's close to what I'm understanding. I understand it's $165 per day, so it's in the range. I'm still waiting for detailed financial information from this administration from my time to Guantanamo Bay. In fact, a letter with Ranking Member or Chairman Paul and the Ranking Member together, we wanted more information on the cost there. When I was there, the 2-month cost estimate for operations was $43 million when we were down there talking to the officials there. And that does not include transportation to and from the island. We find that people are sent to the island and then they're sent back to the United States again before they're sent out. I'm not sure why we have all those costs. We have plenty of ICE facilities to keep them here. Why you have to send them there and back. And on the day that I visited, there were 87 people in custody. And my understanding is that's a pretty normal number. At that time, at least. So my back of the napkin calculation, we're waiting for your numbers, is that it's costing about $100,000 a day to keep someone at Guantanamo Bay. Man, this is like ripe for Doge. Why is Doge not down there? We're spending $100,000 a day to keep someone at Guantanamo, and we fly them down there, we keep them there a while, then we fly them back to the United States. Or we could keep them here for $165 a day. I think that's kind of outrageous. So, I'm concerned by the staggering cost of this, and I would hope, Secretary, you could commit providing this committee a detailed breakdown of the total cost of that operation there. There were just a sea of empty beds. There was all sorts of security folks and nobody in those beds, which is why it's so expensive. So Chairman Paul will probably use this on his Festivus report later, I'm sure, of outrageous government spending, and I'll look forward to seeing that. Secretary Noem, are you familiar with Section 872 of the Homeland Security Act of 2002?
It sounds familiar, sir. You'll have to remind me the topic, yes.
Well, Section 872 requires you, as Secretary, to provide a 60-day notice to Congress of any creation, deletion, consolidation, or alteration of organizations within the department that are not required in statute, which must include an explanation for the rationale behind any charges. It also prohibits you from making any changes to offices in the status. So my question for you is, why have you not provided notice to Congress of the changes you are making at the department? And will you be doing so in the near future? And will you include intended reduction in forces in that? For example, you've already terminated virtually the whole Civil Rights and Civil Liberties Office staff without any communication to Congress about your intent. And the only letter yesterday claiming all of the statutory responsibilities would be met, you sent a letter, but it conflicts certainly with the whistleblower disclosure that I received last week. So please explain to the committee why you are not following this law.
Well, Senator, we are following that law. Those offices that you referenced are still open and functioning and providing their duties as required, but they have been right-sized. Many times the Office of Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, or the Ombudsman Office, which you and I visited about before, had grown quite expansive. They were used as a political tool, suing and attacking each other and censoring individuals and not doing the job for which they were created. So we've right-sized them, put them back on mission, and if there would be an instance to where notification is required, I certainly will follow that.
Time has expired.
This hearing captures one of the most fundamental tensions in democratic governance, the balance between executive power and congressional oversight. Peters methodically exposes two key concerns. First, the sheer waste of taxpayer dollars in using Guantanamo Bay as a holding facility for immigrants detained on civil charges. And second, the unlawful restructuring of DHS offices, particularly the gutting of the Civil Rights and Civil Liberties Office, without notifying Congress, as the law explicitly requires. These are not minor procedural oversights. They are serious breaches of trust that strike at the heart of how democratic institutions are supposed to function. When you step back, it's clear what Peters is doing, calling out performative governance masquerading as border security. The administration touts toughness, but the numbers tell a different story: massive waste, inefficiency, and cruelty. That money could fund border processing improvements, immigration courts, or community-based monitoring programs that are both more humane and more effective. Then comes the second issue, and it's even more alarming. Peters invokes Section 872 of the Homeland Security Act, which requires the DHS Secretary to give Congress 60 days' notice before making any major organizational changes, especially changes involving offices mandated by law. Noem's failure to do so is not just bureaucratic neglect, it's a violation of federal statute. Peters presses the point with precision. Why has the Secretary fired or downsized entire divisions, including the Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, without the legally required notice? Noem's response, claiming she merely right-sized the office, is evasive at best and misleading at worst. Right-sized is bureaucratic doublespeak. What's really happening is a systematic dismantling of oversight mechanisms that were designed to protect Americans' rights, especially against abuses of government power. This is where the hearing becomes more than policy. It's about democratic integrity. When a cabinet official bypasses Congress, she's not just cutting red tape, she's cutting out the people's representatives from the decision-making process. That's not streamlining government, it's subverting checks and balances. Peters' insistence that DHS be transparent isn't partisan grandstanding, it's a defense of institutional democracy. Civil Rights and Civil Liberties offices within DHS were created after 9/11 precisely to ensure that in our pursuit of national security, we never abandon the constitutional principles that define who we are. If those offices can be gutted without oversight, then the door opens to unchecked executive power, the very thing the framers of the Constitution sought to prevent. And the Guantanamo issue ties back to this same theme, the danger of using government resources and authority for spectacle rather than substance. It's not just bad fiscal policy, it's corrosive to the norms of good governance. In the bigger picture, this hearing is a reminder that accountability and transparency are not inconveniences, they are the lifeblood of democracy. If cabinet officials can quietly restructure departments and weaponize agencies for political gain without congressional scrutiny, then the balance of power tilts dangerously toward authoritarianism. Peters' questioning exposes that risk, layer by layer, showing that this is not just about budgets, it's about the erosion of democratic oversight itself. Here's the takeaway for viewers. Government accountability isn't self-sustaining. It survives only when elected officials and the public demand it. That means staying informed, paying attention to oversight hearings like this one, and holding leaders accountable when they flout the law. Democracy depends on public vigilance just as much as it depends on elections. If you believe in a government that answers to the people, not the other way around, then don't tune out these moments. They reveal how democracy is preserved or dismantled in real time. Speak up, stay informed, and insist that those in power follow the law, not their convenience.